Peace, love, and blessings, y'all. I hope you're having an amazing day. So, on today's episode, I want to talk about the significance of understanding market conditions and economic cycles. Ray Dalio talks about short-term and long-term debt cycles. Not going to get into that too much, but it is important to understand that. That's just for a later time. Because you can understand, hey, when's a good time to take a vacation? When's a good time to paying attention to when to buy, assets on sale? When's a good time to buy a house? All these different things are affected by monetary and fiscal policy. So macroeconomics is extremely important. So that being said, what I want to talk about today is how all things in the past then come again into the future. So we can see, again, like Ray Dalio said, the long-term and short-term debt cycles, because they're cycles. So if you pay attention to the previous cycles, you can understand the direction of the cycle and the climate that we're currently in. So without further ado, the Bretton Woods Convention was a convention, took place in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, and it was a system that was set to facilitate international trade while aligning policy goals of individual nations. So, okay, what does that mean? So let's say, for example, it was influenced by anti-policy of that which led to the Great Depression and World War II. Okay, keep it going. So dominated by the two economic superpowers at the time, the U.S. and Britain, this led to the peg to gold at $35 an ounce. Okay, so they're saying that the dollar was going to be worth, how could I say this in a way that makes the most sense? They're going to peg the dollar to gold. So anytime you go to a bank at that time, you would be able to, not at that time, because it was still illegal to own gold at that time. But in essence, not citizens, but other nations would be able to redeem their debts or their bonds that they purchased from America, or dollars, if you will, would be equivalent to $35 an ounce. Okay, so this system allowed all business to be done in debit and credit backed by gold. Okay, and as with any new world order, because this was a new monetary world order, as with any new world order, compliance teams are to be formed. That's where the IMF and the IBRD were formed. The IMF is the International Monetary Fund. The IRBD is now known as the World Bank. IBRD, sorry. So they would assume those positions to act as compliance. Now, again, as progressing through history, desire to hold commodities and other asset classes other than gold proved to be a better bargain, as gold was being undervalued with the increases in U.S. debt and other varied factors like limited real growth and GDP of the U.S. So now, again, the start of 1944, now by the time we're getting to late 50s, 60s, like other countries are seeing that the U.S. isn't really doing good. They're still better than a lot of other nations, but the U.S. is essentially the World Bank at this point, and whatever they do with their money affects the rest of the world. So up until when it ended, other nations could redeem, as I said, their currency in U.S. dollars for gold. So let's continue. So now, quietly, the dollar is slipping. It slips from the Fed reserves, so the federal bank reserves, because the federal bank has large assets and reserves, and it starts to slip away from their balance sheets as the more qualified gold replaces the dollar or bonds or debt, while liabilities on the U.S. balance sheets increase like 4x. So we basically are owing. Our liabilities in the U.S. are essentially 4 times greater than the assets in the bank. So that led to August in 1971. President Nixon severed the dollar gold peg temporarily, even though it never resumed, as we went through before in other videos. So arrangements were made to then drive up the price of gold by devaluing the dollar by about 8.5%, which would have been $3 at $35 an ounce, which now is saying that $3 would just round up to $38 an ounce of gold. Okay, now it's still illegal for the U.S. citizens to own gold. So now's a good time to mention, in April 5th, 1933 is when FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, banned ownership of gold and silver coins, bullions, and certificates without a special license. Because obviously you can do anything when you have that license. They basically, a license is their way of selling your rights back to you. Anyway, it wasn't until 1974 when Nixon resumed precious metal trading. Okay, so in 1970s, some deals were made during the Nixon, the Kissinger era. Henry Kissinger was the U.S. National Security Advisor, and the petrodollar was born. So as we got off of the gold standard, they really tried to find another commodity, another asset class that could help strengthen the dollar, and that was petroleum, oil prices. So we know it as U.S. oil. Much of the world knows it as petrol. Either way, the petrodollar was born in the 70s, because during that times when Henry Kissinger was taking these trips going overseas, and he was basically collaborating with or colluding, if you will, with parties of the UAE and other parts of the Middle East, so that they could get positioning in U.S. dollars. So essentially, it was going to be like a win-win situation. They would agree to sell, because the U.S. dollar was still valuable at the time. They agreed, they're still the strongest currency at that time, because now it's a fiat currency after they took it off of the dollar, after they took it off of gold. So that was going to work out for them, because now they could sell their oil or the petroleum in dollars, which is, again, extremely valuable for them, but it was even more so valuable for us. So the closest thing to policy as far as that curation was of SWIFT, which came to be in 1977. So 1971 was around the time where SWIFT came out, which allowed international market trading and investing, and it also allowed all the wiring and all the money transferring to be done in U.S. denominations, U.S. dollars, on their payment platform. All right, so now that also gives sanction powers to the strongest independent nation, being the U.S. So, all right, so let's fast forward to now, because that was kind of overview. If you don't understand some of that, play it back. Definitely do your own homework, because this is extremely important for as how things are going to come. So, all right, to bring this full cycle, with sanctions being placed on Russia, 2021, and for invading Ukraine, Russia got into bigger and better business, selling the oil, which had been done for the past 50 years or so, in U.S. dollars. Instead of selling their oil to the U.S. and EU in dollars, they decided to sell it to members of the BRICS alliance, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, as well as a total of, I think, 14 nations. If every nation applicant is accepted, there's 14 countries that are looking to get in there. Argentina is one of the newer ones. But they decide to sell to the BRICS alliance in their own currencies. Excuse me. So the Chinese yuan was said to replace the petrodollar for the petro yuan, and it's already taken place because it's backed by gold and traded on the Hong Kong exchange. So the similar story with India. These nations alone couldn't outpace the U.S., but this alliance can likely and will, if the U.S. doesn't continue to show real growth, surpass the U.S. dollar if they came up with their own currency, or just replace the U.S. if they, joined economies and really decided to push the thing forward. Because one way or another, India is definitely stepping into the mainframe. China, we see them, and Russia is a huge country. The entire BRICS nation, they own 41, almost 42% of the entire landmass. So it's definitely something to pay attention to. So that being said, drop a comment if you like this, drop a like, hit a subscribe button, do something, share this with someone if you gain value from it. Give thanks, more love, and definitely stay tuned and pay attention to all the things that are happening in our environment, in our economy, and don't be the last one to find out, because the games are being played. If we don't learn how to play them, then they're going to be played against us. If we learn how to play them, then that's how we win. So more love, more blessings. Stay safe.